Hello and welcome to Chaos to Clarity, the podcast that's your compass to navigate the exciting world of service-based businesses. If you're a determined woman in your current business adventure, striving to conquer the chaos and build your empire, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maggie, your go-to business bestie and chaos navigator. I've spent nearly 2 decades in the service-based industry, building a photography business, a yoga studio, and now a thriving coaching practice. I've cracked the code to consistent income without all the chaos and noise. So get ready to increase your business growth, connect with your ideal clients, and find ease in both business and in life. It's time to turn your frustrations into inspiration and your chaos into clarity. So go ahead and grab your coffee, a pen and paper, and let's dive into the journey of building your dream service-based business together. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am your host. I'm so excited you're here, and I am so excited today to be talking about why lead generation feels so freaking exhausting and some of the fixes that you can do to work smarter, not harder. And I don't mean that in like a buzz term way, right? So if you're ready to stop the hustle and really align with how you are designed to create momentum, number one, make sure you go ahead and grab the magnetic client blueprint. The link is down in the show notes. And that is going to help you understand how to tap into your natural energy to connect better with your audience, both cold, warm, and hot leads. And a lot of times we tend to focus on the cold leads and the hot leads and not the warm leads, when the warm leads are probably the majority of your people. So that's going to help you with all of that. Now, what I really want to talk about today is the energetic root of lead burnout, which means, like burnout in lead generation isn't necessarily about your effort, it's about energetic misalignment. Now, when I talk about this, I really am talking from my past experiences, right? And past experiences of my clients. When I first started coaching, and this would be in like 2020, 2021, when I was transitioning out of yoga studio ownership and into full-time online coaching and mentoring. So when I had the yoga studio, I did have a yoga teacher training program that I co-created and that I led. And in that, I taught people all about how to generate leads, how to bring people into classes. And then I transitioned a lot of that online. So when I first started coaching online, right, I was in a season of posting and messaging and showing up, going to networking meetings, doing all the things. And it felt so draining to me. I was so exhausted. So I was literally doing everything that I was taught to do, right? Batching, engaging, being visible, and my sacral was not lit up. Now, I am a sacral authority. I'm a manifesting generator. So if you're operating from this point where your sacral is not lit up and you're kind of just making these choices based on what you think you should be doing, things are not going to be in alignment. It's going to feel hard to work. It's going to feel hard to show up if you're not excited to do the work. Human design aside, I told clients this even before I started using human design. If you're not excited about the work, either find a way to get excited about it or ship it off to somebody else. Because when you can be excited about the work, you're going to want to show up. And that goes especially for coaches and mentors who have high ticket offers and they do sales calls, or however you're doing sales. You have to be so excited about your offer or it's not going to land. It's not going to hit the way you want it to. And your bank account is going to reflect that. So like for me, when I first started coaching and mentoring on the outside, it looked like I was just winning at everything. And I'm definitely going to come back to this point because it's important, but like the numbers in my bank account definitely were not showing in the beginning, right? They weren't reflecting what I was doing. And here's the thing. It wasn't necessarily about the amount of work. It was the type of work and the way that I was doing it. So the $1,000,000 question, honestly, that people ask me so often, how did I discover that it was the type of work and the way that I was working? Really, it was all about the way I was going about things. Remember before when I said you have to be excited about the things in order to show up for them? I was not necessarily excited to be writing content for social media posts. I was super excited about writing content for podcasts, and I was dreaming about a podcast back when I started. But at the time, I was told, don't do a podcast. It's too much work. So I didn't, right? I listened to that. And I continually found myself saying, well, I think if I do this, it would be better. And now I have an open head, which means I have no gates in my human design in my head. I have an undefined ajna, which means I have a few hanging gates, gates that aren't connected anywhere. And when you have an open and undefined center, things can ebb and flow, right? Energy ebbs and flows. So a lot of times that's really easy to pick up a lot of conditioning. And that's where we generally have to do a lot of deconditioning, is to kind of break that apart so that you start to understand what your authority is actually telling you, right? So I was making decisions with my head and my ajna, not listening to my gut, right? I would say yes to do these things, or I would be doing things because, I should do this because so-and-so is doing this. And I would start doing it and I would just be exhausted. And that was really the cue for me to see, like, okay, I'm exhausted trying to do these things. How can I, speak to my audience and not be exhausted? Was really the question that I started asking myself. And I also found myself saying, I think I need to do ABC. And when I shifted my language, I started saying, I'm curious about podcasting. And all of a sudden I would get these, like, not full body chills, but like full body, like, ooh, this feels exciting. That was the key for me. So depending on what your authority is, right, you have to figure out, like, what is actually going to light you up? What is actually going to make you exciting? Because there's a million ways to market to your audience. And this is what I really want you to remember, right? If you have a piece of pen and paper, feel free to write this down, because when you're excited about what you're doing, what you're talking about, how you're talking about it, who you're talking about it with, it's going to feel so much easier to show up and to share what you're doing and to help bridge that trust gap that we're experiencing right now. So as I found myself saying, I think this will work, or I think blah, 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 right? I found myself jumping from thing to thing because, like a classic manifesting generator, I was like, ooh, squirrel, and all over the place instead of being able to focus on one thing. And I don't mean like one thing forever. I mean one thing at a time where I can complete tasks. So something that people don't really realize when you start to use your design is that you've likely been operating on something other than what you need to be. So like for me, I was operating on saying yes in my head because I was in people pleasing mode and I wanted to just please whoever I was talking to. So I was doing that instead of kind of waiting for that sacral yes or the sacral no. And for me, it's pretty quick. Sometimes it takes a little bit for me to kind of step back and really kind of like feel into the decision. But this is super, super important for you to understand what that feels like. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here because I promise this is all going to make sense when I'm done with the tangent, but this tangent is just so good. And when I was creating this episode, I knew it needed to be in here. So I want you to imagine that you're on a sales call and you literally get to the point in the sales call where you're going to get pitched to, right? You know, you're going to get, you're going to get that feedback, right? You want to know, what is the offer? How much do I have to pay? Right? And you are nervous because of all the what ifs that start rolling in through your mind. And, the other person is saying it's XYZ price. Do you want to opt in? And then there's silence and you automatically say yes. even if it's not the right choice, right? So you opt in, and in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I don't know if this is right. Maybe this isn't right. And you're already starting to have buyer's remorse, right? And then you pay, you get off the call, and then a couple hours later, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And then all of the ways that this isn't aligned start to creep in for you, and you start to go, oh no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine, right? Like, does that sound familiar to you? Because I know it does to me. And when I was creating this episode, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is why people tend to have buyer's remorse, right? Or on the flip side, you are the one that's hosting the sales call and you blurt out the price. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have to add like 27 things because you're assuming that the person on the other end just wants more and you're afraid of silence. So you just fill the void, right? And this is where I do sales calls differently, because even if you're a sacral authority, there is a level of emotional authority that has to come into play here. So I know a lot of people, like don't understand their sacral authority. So if you know what yours is, your authority, right, you can start to tap into, like, especially if you're an emotional authority, you have to be able to feel the wave. You have to be able to feel the yes, feel the no, and come back to whatever clarity is, whether that's a yes or a no. So anytime I'm on a sales call with someone, I always, because I know their authority, I can give them, kind of like cues and different ways to figure out what their answer is. And I always tell people, it's okay if the answer is no. Especially if they're kind of floundering around and they kind of can't make a decision, or they continue to kind of make, kind of small talk as they're like in the back of their mind, trying to figure out, like, can I do this? Do I want to do this? Giving them that opportunity to be like, it's really okay if the answer is no. I don't want to like straggle you along, kind of a thing. So I've learned how to help myself, either when I'm going into sales calls where I'm the one selling or where I'm the one being sold to. And what I do prior to the sales call, I always check in with myself. So before a meeting, I will sit and I will close my eyes. And first I have a little dance party, right? Just to get the energy going. And then I sit down and I close my eyes and I have a couple deep breaths. And then I start to picture this person that I am getting on a Zoom call with. Again, whether I'm the one selling or they're the one selling to me. And I check in with myself and I say, okay, how am I actually feeling about this right now? What is this feeling like in my body? Is it kind of a nervous energy where I'm like, I don't want to be sold to, or like, oh, I'm so nervous about selling? Because yes, even 18 years into being an entrepreneur, I still get nervous about sales calls, right? That's something that, like, for me, it's kind of that gut check of like, am I a little bit nervous? Yeah. I mean, I'm so excited about my offers, but also there's still, like, we all fear the unknown, right? So I check in with myself to see how my energy is doing, because I want to be in my best energy regardless of what happens on this call. And I really make it a point to be in that energy because I want the other person to feel as best. I also want the other person to feel their best on the call. I love it when there's mosquitoes in the house. Anyway, if you have sacral authority, I want you to start checking in with your body. What does a yes feel like? What does a no or no thank you or whatever that is, what does that feel like? And you can do this with everything, right? All the things, right? And you can start to understand what that feels like. So just for a moment, right? If you're a sacral authority, as long as you're not driving, right? If you're driving or listening to this somewhere where you cannot close your eyes, I want you to forward this like 30 seconds because you're not going to be able to do this exercise. So if you are not operating heavy machinery, I want you to just close your eyes for a second, and I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to see how your body reacts. And this is how you turn your sacral on, how you start to listen to your sacral. You're listening for the and the Okay, so things like, are you sitting? Are you standing? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Are you, look at me, having that, having a brain fart. Anyway, so when you start asking yourself these, you're giving yourself choices, and that is really what you're going for instead of going, what do I want to do today? Giving yourself the choice. Do I want to create content? Do I want to record something? How do I feel about having a cold glass of water, right? So things like that. So how does this all circle back to the point that I was talking about before? So all of these things that you should be doing, maybe you don't need to, or maybe you do them differently so that it feels in flow with you. So again, checking in. Is posting on Instagram a good idea for me today? Or do I want to post on Instagram? Do I want to post on YouTube? Do I want to be active in Facebook groups, right? Before you get into what flow feels like, we're also going to talk about, because it's a little bit different for each of the types, we're going to talk about where burnout really comes from when we're thinking about this energetically from a human design perspective. So we're going to reframe the conversation a little bit about burnout, because it's not necessarily that it's too much on your plate. I mean, it is, but it's also that it's too much that isn't aligned. Now, I've talked about in past episodes how, just a few months ago, I was making choices and taking things off my plate because I had too much on my plate that was not aligned for me. It didn't check for me. So I don't want you to get this confused, because burnout is real, right? I've experienced burnout multiple times. I know people who have been hospitalized for burnout, right? So I know I'll revisit burnout again, for myself, because honestly, I'm a Manny-gen and I love to do all the things, and I often do too much, right? Some people would say I do too much. I have a lot of people who have told me, if I had $1 for every time someone told me I was doing too much stuff, I would literally be a millionaire or a billionaire, because it's a lot. But here's the thing. When we think about burnout, right, we often come into burnout because you're doing too many things. And let's think about that. We've said yes to too many things. And that is where, right, you're not checking your energy. You're just saying yes. You're saying yes. You're using your head in ajna because you're like, I think this person needs this thing. I think I have to do it for them. Right? And that is how you're piling up with the burnout. And honestly, we're all human. So you really only have so much that you can do in one day. So if you're feeling like you're working 24/7, you probably are. And this is where I highly suggest building rest into your day, whether that is little pockets of rest or not, right? Whether that's a whole day, a couple of hours, because trust me, I know what it feels like to feel so behind the 8 ball in doing all the things where I can't possibly rest. So when I was feeling that way, something I started incorporating into my day was taking 1 hour lunch break every single day and then being done with my computer by 3 p.m. in the afternoon, regardless of the day. That gave me time and space to rest and to actually unplug and have those creative ideas drop in, because when I'm using my head and ajna too much, I don't often have creativity. And this is where when people are like, I'm not creative, I will often say, when was the last time you've rested? Because creativity comes from rest, when we allow our body to unplug and decompress from what we've been doing. So let's talk about aligned strategy versus forced strategy. And we're going to get right into it with lead generation with this, because so many people struggle with this, and I want you to stop struggling. Okay, so when we think about lead gen and forced versus aligned strategies, right? A forced strategy would be something like someone telling you to go and DM 50 to 100 people per day, week, month, whatever, just because, right? Like someone told you that and the numbers game, quote unquote, works. And while, yes, the numbers game does work. I will say that, yes, it does work. However, it's not always an aligned strategy for every single person. If that were true, you would already be a millionaire and we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? Most people think sending that many DMs every day feels spammy, is draining your energy, and there is no joy in that. Like, just literally, PS, someone once told me I had to DM 20 to 40 people per day in order to book, quote unquote, enough sales calls for the week. I'm telling you from experience, that did not work for me. And I'm a manifesting generator, right? Who loves to do so many things. But I had to find a way to be curious about this because I do love the DMs. I love having those one-on-one conversations. I love it when I can connect with people. I love being able to help people just understand better what they're doing so that they can feel good in their business. When I talk about aligned strategy, I want you to think about being curious here. So instead of, sending 50 people messages, I mean, of course, if your energy calls for it, by all means, send 50 people a message, but do it with genuine interest. And if you're sacral, a gut response, right? Get curious. What could these conversations hold for you, right? So if you're a manifesting generator or generator, right? Use your gut response. Would it feel good to message 3 people today? Would it feel good to have a conversation with 5 different people? Who on my friends list right now am I going to come in contact with when I open the app and see what they've posted and give them some feedback? Right? How cool would that feel versus, oh, I have to send 50 people emails or messages, right? Now, if you are a projector, you're looking for invitations. If you have splenic authority, you're looking for that inner nudge, which is really oftentimes a whisper. So you have to get really good at kind of stilling yourself and feeling into what is that inner nudge telling you. Again, it's all about feeling curious, connected, and energized. And remember, quality over quantity. Because really, when you think about it, if you're messaging 3 people, say you message 3 new people every single day for a month, whether you're connected with them or whether they're a new connection on your social media, 3 per day, right? Over 30 days, that's 90 new people in a month. Now, if you take it a step further, and then every day you also continue a conversation or invite someone to hop on a coffee chat or a sales call, right? Now that 90 becomes potentially 180 connections who are cool to warm leads in a month. Now, you don't have to do this every day. You could do it 5 days a week. You could do it 3 days a week. What is important to remember is having a strategy behind it. So now let's talk a little bit about having an undefined root center, because I do have an undefined root center, which if you're looking at a human design chart, your sacral and root are the bottom 2 squares. So sacral is above root is on the bottom. Now, if you have an undefined root center, which I do, you will kind of feel this ebb and flow, and you will feel like you need to just get all the things done and you need to rush through them. And you also tend to say yes a lot. Now, if you have a defined root center, you often have consistent energy to work, but only when it's a response, right? And this is for all the manifesting generators and generators. When the response is a yes, you will have the energy to work and you will just be able to work and get it done. If you have it undefined, you have an internal pressure to, oh my God, I have to get things done. I have to get this done. I have to get this done yesterday. I feel this pressure so much. And there's so many little nuances that I could go into here, but I'm, for the sake of brevity, not going to go into it here. So, just know that checking in with yourself energetically, right? How am I feeling today? Am I feeling good? Am I feeling tired? What are, 1 to 3 things that I can do today to move the needle forward in my business? Is that create a post? Is that have a conversation? Is that ask to get on a sales call, right? Like what are those things, right? So let's talk a little bit about burnout by design. And I'm definitely going to go into a little bit more of these in the next episode. So we're going to go over these quick when we think of burnout by design. So kind of just one hitters here. So if you're a manifester, your burnout trigger is going to be over initiating, people pleasing, and you're not informing. That's a big one. Instead, if you're a manifester, look for the energy surge, that excitement, that, ooh, I want to follow this trail, right? And you also need rest between the surges. Back to the root center, right? Defined or undefined. The end of a root cycle is rest. So projectors, your burnout trigger, overworking and not waiting for invitations. What you can do instead is look for the recognition, especially with yourself. Look for the invitations and look for rest. You need a lot of rest if you are a projector. Reflectors, your burnout trigger, overexposure to people and or environment and rushing your decisions. If you're a reflector, what you can do instead is create more time, more peace, find the delight and surprise and nourish your environment. Be in an environment that feels nourishing for you. Generators, your burnout trigger, saying yes to all the I should do this. Staying too long in the wrong environment. If it's not a good environment for you, you can look at your environment in your human design, and just kind of see what environments will invigorate you. You can also just understand what response looks like. And you're always responding, right? We're always responding to our environment, and, look for the sacral, and Manifesting generators, your burnout trigger, multitasking out of obligation and not being excited. If you're not excited, you probably don't want to do it, or at least don't do it that day, right? So what you can do instead is you have my permission to pivot and the freedom to follow what's exciting you and lighting you up, because that is oftentimes going to get the work done quicker than anything else. So again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Really, there's so much more to get into here. So let's talk about what feels good, because alignment is what feels good. And let's talk about what alignment actually feels like for you. So we're going to talk about the sacral yes versus no. I've talked a little bit about it in this episode. And again, you have to look for those indicators. This is something that if we work together, we look at your authority and we look at what does yes feel like? What does no feel like? And how can you start to understand where those are showing up? How can you, work in accordance to that? How can you really be curious about this thing? So if you're feeling lit up, if you're not feeling lit up, it's not your strategy necessarily that's wrong. It's probably a misdirection of your energy. Although it can be that you don't have a strategy behind it, which is honestly a very common occurrence for a lot of people. They're like, I'm going to show up on social media and I'm going to talk to people. And then there's no strategy behind it. Like, what comes after that? What comes after you have the conversation? You have to know before you can go out and bring the clients in. So it's a big struggle for a lot of people. And that's why I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you understand and how to implement strategies that feel good for you so that you can work, so that you can bring in the people you want to bring in, so that you can make the money you want to make, right? So this, for an example here, you're posting what should, quote unquote, get engagement versus what you want to say, right? So if you're thinking about like strategies and feeling aligned, like more often than not, the things you want to say might kind of feel scary because what if someone doesn't agree with you? And girl, it's okay. It's really okay because not everyone is meant to agree with you. Not everyone is going to be your client. And honestly, if you're saying what should get engagement, it's probably really vanilla. And most people are looking for chocolate swirl these days, right? Most people are looking for variety and flavor, and they want to know the real you. They don't want to know the cookie cutter you that was, what got the clicks 5 years ago. So, and I just want to say, right, I talked about messaging in this episode. And, if it's not aligned for you, that's okay, right? But you want to feel genuinely curious or excited to connect with people. But honestly, you're not going to make sales if you're not connecting with people, whether that's through ads, whether that's through organic, whether that's through DMs or emails or whatever that is. Freebies, I don't care. You're not going to get the leads you want if you're not genuinely curious or excited to connect with people. So in the 20 leads in 2 weeks email course that I created, which if you want access to that, it's in the show notes. I teach you how to use your human design and how to understand how to message people, right? So, like in this email course, yes, you are messaging people every day. But it's like 1 to 3 people. So before, right, when I said if you would message 3 new people every single day for 30 days, that's 90 people, right? Because 3 times 30 is 90. Okay. It's going to give you the opportunity to see who you're connected with, right? What things you've seen on socials that have sparked the reaction. It's going to give you a baseline for where you're at in your business right now. And that's super important because the data doesn't lie, right? So if you are like, oh my gosh, I'm posting every day and all this stuff, and you're not seeing the results that you want, it's probably because you haven't looked at the data, right? How are your posts performing? Are they doing what you want them to do? If not, let's change it. Let's shift it. Sometimes you just need a little bit of help. So go ahead and grab the 20 leads in 2 weeks email course. Now, it's an email every day for 14 days. You don't have to do it in that 2-week time period. You could do it over a month, but it will help you. Everyone who's gone through that has easily brought in 40 plus leads. And that's spanning all different types, right? Reflectors, manifestors, mani-gens, generators, projectors, everybody. So it's a really easy way for you to understand how to use your energy. So when we think about all of this, we're reframing and rebuilding this. So we want to think about when the strategy is correct, momentum feels energizing, not exhausting. So if you're feeling exhausted, it's probably not right for you. You probably just need to reevaluate how you're doing, what you're doing, and get back into alignment. You don't have to stay there. Something that I've learned from one of my recent mentors is that you can realign yourself right now. You can choose to do that, and it will give you your time and your joy back. You can step into that alignment right now. And if you start to sway away from it, that's when you pull yourself back and you say, okay, this is starting to not feel great. Realign. It doesn't, there's not like all this huff and puff that you have to do, right? Anyway, some new beliefs for you, right? You are not here to chase leads. You are here to attract leads. You don't have to build a strategy that burns you out. You can build a strategy that excites and invigorates you. And you get to create this with your energy. You get to work with your energy, the natural energy that you have. So I hope this all hit home for you. number one, make sure you go and download the Magnetic Client Blueprint. That link is in the show notes. And then also make sure you're opting into the 20 leads in 2 weeks email course. That link is also in the show notes. It's all done through email. I would love to lastly also invite you to the Magnetic Conversations workshop. That is on July 15th at 2 p.m. Central. That link will also be in the show notes. I'm so excited to see you. I can't wait. As always, make sure you find me on Instagram at Maggie Lynn Mentoring and tell me what resonated here in this episode. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you like, share, follow, all the things. And I will see you in the next episode.